Why, hello there. I'm going to make a really, really pretty, but really, really easy and really, really simple dessert that will impress all of your friends with minimal effort. So I'm going to make rose apple tarts. To make rose apple tarts, you only need the things you see in front of you. So I've even got all of my equipment out because it's just such a darned easy recipe. So first things first, I have 2 apples. You can use red apples. You can use Golden Delicious apples. I'm using Granny Smith because I really like sour apples. Any apple, fantastic, 2 apples. I also have some lemon juice, and I'll need some water a little bit later, but I can get that out of the tap. I have raspberry confiture, raspberry jelly, but you can really use any flavor of jelly or jam that goes with an apple. So the original recipe calls for apricot. I like to use the raspberry because it's a nice dark red and it bleeds into the apple and starts making the rose red. It's really pretty. But you could literally use any flavor of jam you like. And then finally, I just have some puff pastry here. In terms of the tools that I need a bowl to put my apples in once I slice them. I need this little nifty doohickey, which is an apple core. It's going to take the middle, the seeds out for us. You do not have to have this really cool mandolin to very thinly slice your apples, but you do need to slice them paper thin, and a mandolin really helps. Otherwise, you're stuck doing it with your chef's knife. And then finally, I need a muffin tin. This one has 12 in it, which is perfect, but you could use 2 of 6, etc., etc. So I'm going to go ahead and begin preparing my apples. The time has come to go ahead and start preparing our apples. So what I have here is just a bowl of cold water, and I'm going to add sprinkles of lemon juice, maybe a tablespoon, maybe 2 tablespoons. It's not really to flavor our apples. It's just to keep them from browning while we work. So I can go ahead and set this aside. And you can see here I've got my 2 apples, I've got my core, and I do have a knife here because I'm going to show you how to do this without a mandolin, without a slicer, just in case you don't have one. So first things first, we're just going to look for the stem of our apple, and we're going to press our core down through the middle with the stem right there in the middle of the circle until it comes all the way out the bottom. And look at that, middle of the apple gone. I am purposefully choosing not to peel my apples. You really don't need to for this recipe. And also, when the peels shrivel up in the oven a little bit, it's actually going to make the roses look really nice. So here is what we would do if we didn't have a really nice mandolin. We first start by cutting these in half. And we're left with our 2 apple halves here. Now we're going to slice like this. And if I didn't have my mandolin, then I probably start by, you can see this is kind of like on a slant, not a problem. I might just level it out with the top. And then I need paper thin slices, so I actually have to be really careful with this. A, for my own fingers, and B, to get the slices as thin as possible. So there's no sense in rushing things. You want to be able to see, like, your finger. See how I can see my fingertips through the apple? You want to be able to see your fingertips through the apple. And then I can put that in my bowl of water that I have off to my right. And just very carefully continue slicing my nice thin slices. Now, if I don't want to do this by hand, if I have a really nice mandolin, then I can slice them that way. Rule number 1 of mandolin use, always use your hand guard. I have cut my fingers on these very sharp blades. You don't want to do it. Rule number 2, always have a cutting board to catch what you're going to cut. So what I'll do here is pop the legs out on my nifty little mandolin and place that on my cutting board. Now a lot of mandolins will have settings to tell you exactly how thick you're going to get your stuff. I'm actually going to start by unlocking it onto the thinnest setting, and I'll do a test slice to make absolutely sure that that's the size I want. So I'm just going to fit this onto my Neato hand protector and do a slice and see if that's going to be okay for us. All right, so that's 2 slices, and then we check. And that is beautiful, so I'm going to keep that going. There we go. Whoopsies. Now, if you see a piece of apple get stuck, the worst thing that you could possibly do is fiddle with that with your fingers. Sharp blades will cut you. So I actually just use a fork to pull it out. Boop. There we are. That's a bit of extra. So when we lift our mandolin, we have many, many beautiful apple slices. I will put these in my water, and I will continue. Now that my apples are wonderful and finished, I'm just going to set these aside. We're going to end up microwaving these, believe it or not, for 1 to 2 minutes, but we don't need to do it yet. The last thing that I need to prepare before I can begin making my roses is my jam. So we need this to be really nice and soft. I'm going to take about 4 or 5 tablespoons of this jam, just like soup spoons full. And then I'm actually going to add a little bit of water to this. Not much, like a soup spoon of water. I just want to make it a little bit looser. And there we are. And then I'm mixy. And really, that's all that there is to this. We're going to get to our puff pastry in just a second. Boom, there we go. Make sure that you keep the spoon. So here we are, puff pastry time. You can see in front of you the puff pastry that has been warming up because I've used store-bought puff pastry in this particular case. I've also got myself a rolling pin and some flour here off to the side. Because here, unfortunately, at least in most of our stores, I can only find puff pastry in circular form, but what I really want is rectangles. And that's all right. We can make a circle into a rectangle. So I'm going to go ahead and unroll my puff pastry here. And I'm going to sprinkle just a little bit of flour. Not a lot. I don't need a ton. Just enough to make this a little bit easy to work with and to keep it around for my rolling pin. We will flip our circle onto our work surface, and then I'm just going to get to work making this into a little bit better of a rectangle. Now, of course, he could be a straighter looking rectangle, but honestly, it's kind of okay if we don't get it perfect. Now, my next goal is actually to cut this dough into long strips. We're going to be going for 5 or 6 even strips here. Even is, of course, a relative term. If you're really a perfectionist like me, then you can slice off just some extra pokey outy bits to make things a little bit more even. And then I like to kind of estimate as best as I can. So I'll try to slice it first in half, and then I'll go for my other 3. Now, we do want to make absolutely sure that each strip is reasonably wide, maybe an inch or so, because of what we're going to do with that dough. So a strip just like that is actually going to be really nice. And as you can see, not dragging your knife, but rocking it back and forth will make the pastry friendlier towards you. So in strips, just like that. So we are now prepared to assemble our tarts. We're going to begin with one of our strips of dough and about a teaspoon of our raspberry jam. We're going to very carefully down the middle, basically just drizzle that teaspoon. Could take 2 teaspoons, maybe a teaspoon and a half. The idea being is that you just want some flavor in the bottom of your tart. And you just want it to be nice and smeared into the middle there. Now, you'll see that I have brought my apples back, and these have been microwaved for about 5 to 6 minutes in their water and then drained. And the reason that we do that is because a microwaved apple is a bendy apple, and we need that for our tart. So we're going to place our apples overlapping our apple slices onto the pastry. Now these are going to be hot, so be very careful. And basically we want our apple to be popping up out of the top of the pastry. But we definitely want there to be a place where the apple can sit on the pastry, because when we roll this all up, it's all got to stay together. And you want to make sure that you layer your apple slices one on top of the other so that we get this nice little ridge on your pastry. And then we need to fold our strip in half, enclosing the apple slices, and final step, we're going to roll it on up. You start at one end and just keep rolling. If your apples need to get pushed a little bit back in, no problem. I might have even put mine up a little bit higher than I wanted to, but that's okay. He's going to be fine. And now look at how beautiful our little rose is. And we're going to place him in our greased muffin tin. Just like that. And then when we have a full muffin tin, we're going to pop these into the oven. Right about now is a great time to preheat your oven to 190 degrees Celsius or 350 degrees Fahrenheit. I'll see you when we're all finished. All right, work finished. You can tell that one of my roses met with tragedy, but that's okay because I still have 11 beauties here. I'm going to pop these into my preheated oven. We're going to start our bake time at 20 to 25 minutes and then see where we're at. Our roses have just come out of the oven and look at how pretty they are. You might be thinking, oh my gosh, she burnt the apple, but no, I did not. I in fact want that color on the apple, and so I actually ended up turning on my oven to convection. And when I used convection, I only baked for about 25 minutes plus 6 or 7 minutes to make absolutely sure that the pastry was done. But at that 25-minute mark, I went ahead and turned my oven temperature down to about 150 degrees Celsius, and I turned off the convection and turned it to regular conventional oven. And that's what has given me these really prettily colored roses. So now in just a second, with something like this so that I don't scrape up my nice pan, these have just come out of the oven, so I'm taking a little bit of a risk in popping one of these out just to show you what they look like, trying not to burn myself. Look at how pretty it is. And that, my friends, is an apple rose tart. Enjoy!